To speak to us today, Todd Ambs. He's the Assistant Deputy Secretary of the Wisconsin DNR. Before being named to the DNR Secretary's leadership team, Todd had previously served as DNR Water Division Administrator from 2003 to 2010, worked in the environmental policy field for more than 35 years, most recently as the Director for Healing Our Waters Great Lakes Coalition. He has extensive experience in both state government and nonprofit organizations, including serving as Executive Director of 2 statewide river organizations, including our own River Alliance of Wisconsin. And in fact, I probably wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for Todd, who hired me as the business manager of the River Alliance. When I wanted to get out of being an attorney, he took a risk on the fact that an attorney would actually want to do a business manager job. And it turned out to be a good hire. We both share a love of using strong language against technology, so we bonded quite nicely. And I understand that he continues to this day, and my coworkers know I do as well. Todd also, I think, is going to own the distinction as the DNR, the highest-ranking DNR official to play music at the Lakes Convention after midnight. For those of you that were there, it was all quite a treat as we made music. So, Todd Ambs.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Yeah, it was great fun to get here. Last night, I originally decided to come up and trying to avoid some of the bad weather, and got here by 8 o'clock at night. But I had seen that thing, to bring instruments, so just in case, threw the guitar in, and it was a lot of fun. So really enjoyed that last night. I don't get a chance to do something like that much anymore. I am really glad to be here with so many folks that I have known for many years, and others got to meet. My only regret is that I wasn't able to be here for the whole thing, but take a few minutes today to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're working on in the new administration, and particularly at the DNR, and touch on some of the issues I know that you all care about. But and certainly to continue to celebrate the partnerships that we have with these great groups. I think the first one of these conferences I came to was probably about 20 years ago. And for those of you that remember him, Ken Wiesner said that I had to come, and made a point of saying that not only because the content was good, but the after hours revelry was something I definitely wanted to partake in. So I wasn't disappointed then, and certainly not now either. What the Lakes Association has done over the years is just great. Certainly, really, it's exciting for me to see the Wave Action volunteers and what's become of that program, and how it has grown over the years is really exciting, and all the work that you all do to protect and manage and restore the waters of this state. As Mike shared with you, I do have kind of a long array of experiences in my career now that spans almost 4 decades. Hard to believe, to me anyway. The last job I had, I think, was the 7th nonprofit I've worked for. This is my 6th trip back into state government. So I either have a broad range of experience, or my friends would suggest I have difficulty holding a job. Either way, I'm delighted to be back. And I knew getting into this, having been in the DNR as Water Division Administrator for about 8 years, that it's always an interesting challenge going back into my favorite state agency, and I felt like I was ready for the ride. But before we get to the challenges ahead, I always like to remind people, and I know that all of you, many of you probably know a lot of this, but it's just, to me, it's always good to kind of set the stage before we talk about the challenges ahead, to remind ourselves a little bit about why we do this. And Wisconsin, how many people here born and raised in Wisconsin? Yeah, it's about normal for crowds I talk to. You know, and I know that most of you know this, but it just, as somebody who spent a lot of time working across the Great Lakes region and all across the country, this is an incredible state, especially if you love water. We have 84,000 miles of rivers and streams in the state, and 11,000 miles of cold water streams in this state. We have I was about to say the number of lakes, but you know, it's interesting because I always comment that, you know, some states seem to have, I don't know, some sort of maybe a little bit of an inferiority complex or something. They feel compelled to put the number of their lakes on their license plates. We have 15,000 lakes in Wisconsin, just saying. We have 5 million acres of wetlands in this state. We have 800 miles of Great Lakes shoreline, 190 miles of Mississippi River shoreline, and enough groundwater in this state that if it was laid evenly across the state, and we all know, of course, that it is not, but if it were, it would be 100 feet deep. We have just amazing, awesome fisheries. We are second in the nation in the number of out-of-state anglers that come to this state to go fishing. And we have, one of the things I always love about Wisconsin, if you look at the top states in terms of fishing licenses, we're always in like the top 4 or 5, but we're the top 4 or 5 with states like California and, you know, New York and states with big populations. As a per capita, I mean, there's nothing comes close to Wisconsin. We have 1.4 million fishing licenses in this state. We only have 5.5 million people. It's impressive. So it's great what we have here, but it's hard work to protect these water resources, and all of you know this and the work that you do every day. And you also know that one of the reasons that it's hard work is we don't own the water, not in this state. In this state, the waters of this state, by our state constitution, are held in trust for future generations. And that importance of the public trust doctrine, it is significant. I believe firmly in it, but it also is a challenge because what that means, of course, is because nobody owns the water, everybody in this state wants to use it for different purposes. Everybody's got competing desires of how they want to use that water. And of course, at the DNR, lucky us, we get to break the ties when there's questions about that. So, but all of that, and that setting and what we have, that's the good news. But the challenges are many, and we know about them. Harmful algal blooms continue to be a challenge in a number of our inland lakes, and certainly in Green Bay. Polluted runoff from a variety of sources, both point and non-point sources. Old dilapidated plumbing. We've got a significant problem with out-of-date both wastewater and drinking water infrastructure in this state, and an interesting challenge that we've got going forward on that front. I'll just note, the Clean Water Act passed in 1972, and then a lot of the infrastructure was put in, and we made a lot of good progress in terms of point source discharges, and that's all wonderful, but think of it in this context. Now we are 40 years later, and we need to replace a lot of that infrastructure. In the mid-1970s, the federal government provided 65% of the funding for that infrastructure, all in the form of grants. Today, the federal government provides 9% of that funding, most in the form of low-interest loans. So even if we're able to come up with the funding for that, and it is entirely borne at the local water utility, the then challenges in terms of the water rates that they would have to charge is a real vexing problem, and something that we've really got to grapple with as a society, not just here in Wisconsin, but across the country. So we've got a lot of those issues, a lot of those challenges, and of course at the top of the list is the issue of drinking water. That's why I was very proud, honored when Secretary Cole asked me to come join the Secretary's office, and also because of the Clean Water Initiative that was announced by Governor Evers as he declared that 2019 as the year of clean drinking water in Wisconsin. And the need for this is simple, important, and compelling. Thanks to a wide array of legacy contaminants, persistent contaminants, emerging contaminants, coming from a wide array of sources, and I'll touch on those in a minute. But here's the bottom line. Whether you are in the middle of Milwaukee, or you are in the middle of the Driftless area, or you're up in Kewaunee County, or a whole host of other locations, unfortunately, today in Wisconsin, tens of thousands of people are no longer confident they can turn on the tap and drink the water. That has to get fixed. The Clean Water Initiative, to begin the work on that effort, includes a number of things in the governor's budget that attempt to begin to build the important foundation to address these critical problems. It includes investments in bonding authority that includes more than $70 million in bonding to improve water quality across the state, $40 million in bonding to help fund lead lateral replacements across the state. We have 176,000 lead laterals that need to be replaced, and you can't just replace part of them. You've got to replace the whole thing. If you really want to get to end results, it's important that we apply appropriate anti-corrosive technologies in the interim, but in the long term, we've got to get those replaced. And I don't know about you, but I don't really care where those lead lines are. If anybody's been watching some of the news recently, doesn't matter where you live. If they need to be replaced, they need to be replaced. So I, for one, am pleased that he's got this proposal. There's also another $25 million in bonding to provide the state share of funds needed to clean up the remaining toxic hotspots in the state, both in Milwaukee and along the St. Louis River near Superior, that are there from legacy contaminants of decades ago. Again, the cleanup plan's ready, we're making progress. The only thing that's lacking is the state cost share, and that's what that $25 million would do. $6.5 million for targeted runoff management program. We also are, he's definitely putting his priorities out there in terms of what he has focused on during the campaign in terms of investing in the science of drinking water quality by adding 5 new science staff in the agency, 2 to focus on contaminants known as PFAS, that I know you've heard a little bit about here in the last couple of days. I will touch on a little bit more, and 3 to work on general water quality issues. In addition, assistance to those hit hardest by well contamination through a 5-fold increase in the well compensation funding from $200,000 a year to $1 million a year. That's important. We need to do that. If somebody has a contaminated well, you need to take action to make sure that they can have potable water. But make no mistake about it, if that's all we do, you're just addressing the symptom and not the problem. It is a short-term fix to contaminated well, does not fix the root of the problem. That's why we're also investing in, among other places, $75,000 to help fund the completion of the Southwest Wisconsin geology and groundwater study to determine what are the causes of contamination of wells in that 3-county area. For those of you who don't know, the study that came out right after the first of the year that found that over 40% of the wells tested, the water quality was unsafe to drink. The budget also includes funding for 4 additional TMDL positions to accelerate these cleanup plans for where we have impaired waterways, 5 new positions to handle large animal farm CAFO permitting, compliance and enforcement to ensure safe manure handling and facility operations, and something that I know is near and dear to many hearts in this room. It would provide nearly $1.5 million a year in additional grants for improving water quality in rivers and lakes that are the Rivers and Lakes Grants programs. So, very clear statement of where we are in terms of our resources and dedication to addressing this challenge. We're also glad to see that legislators agree that water quality is a priority. Issues, including all of these, are raised frequently during discussions with legislators. It is also, I think, we've got an opportunity here. Again, Secretary-designate Cole, when he was making the rounds to legislators in the Senate, during his confirmation process, he said the number one issue for every senator, regardless of party, was drinking water. So I am hopeful, even in this era of difficult, sometimes partisan challenges and rhetoric, that we can actually make some bipartisan progress on this critically important issue. So the Water Quality Task Force at the legislative level has already begun meeting. The first meetings in March, and will begin holding a series of meetings, hearings around the state, including one in this area. Those will go through the summer into early fall, so make sure that you show up and discuss those issues of particular importance to you. It's not going to be easy. These are not easy issues. They're not easy challenges. But as a sage commentator, my father used to say, we won't go into detail about nitrates and PFAS and other specific issues, because I know that others have been covering those topics, and Adrian, I know, touched on a number of those yesterday. Although I will say that one of the things that you will see from the DNR, certainly, and from this administration more broadly, is that while it is great the legislature is holding these hearings and looking to move on, they have indicated a series of bills by the end of the year, we're not waiting. There's too many things that we can and should be doing right now. And so we're acting on a number of fronts. Just this week, the DNR worked with the Department of Health Services to ask the health agency to review an additional 40 contaminants for possible groundwater quality standards, and 34 of those were in this suite of chemical compounds under the PFAS heading. This work comes on the heels of the department asking the Department of Health Services last spring to review an initial 27 contaminants, including 2 polyfluoroalkyl substances, the PFAS substances. Again, how many folks have begun to really get your arms around the challenges associated with these chemical compounds? Heard much about PFAS? You will. It really is, I can tell you, I'm kind of a water policy geek, so I study this and have looked into it. It was striking to me. I restarted with the agency about a month ago. Just as luck would have it, the first 4 days I was in 4 different places, talking with 4 different groups. I was in DC for a meeting, I was in Chicago for a meeting, I was here in Stevens Point for something, and I was somewhere else. And those, all 4 days, every group I was in was talking about this. These are human-made chemicals that have been used for decades in numerous products, such as nonstick cookware, fast food wrappers, stain-resistant sprays, and firefighting foam. And it is a huge problem. Michigan and Minnesota are coming to grips with this more quickly than we are, because they've had it more in the across a wide variety of their communities. But this is not just about as important and significant as the problems in Marinette with the Tyco facility up there and the concerns about the Truax Air Force Base in Madison. I wish those were the only sites that we had a problem. This stuff is everywhere. And how we're going to grapple with it and what we're going to do in terms of coming up with groundwater standards and surface water standards and drinking water standards is really going to be a challenge. So we're doing the best that we can. The DNR has also announced just for the Truax site, we've hired an environmental consulting firm to help determine the source of contamination affecting 2 Madison drinking water wells. The work is part of a pilot project being done in collaboration with the City of Madison and Madison Water Utility. And as leadership, we understand we have to be creative about solutions, and we're going to have to be honest with people when we're talking about what we're going to do. What do you do? I mean, the good news is wastewater treatment facilities, as an example, when these chemical compounds get into the water stream, they can get them out. But then they go into biosolids. What do you do with the biosolids? It's a vexing problem. Nobody's got a really good answer for what you do with those biosolids. Historically, what they've done is they've spread those biosolids often on fields nearby, and then it rains. And, 10, 20 years ago, nobody knew that that was a problem. But now we're finding this significant evidence of problems, human health problems, fetal impacts, damage to pregnant women. So we're going to have to really tackle these issues head on, be honest with people about the challenges ahead, and move forward with creative solutions. So how is the DNR going to approach these issues and others in the new administration? Well, I think we can tell you that, among other things, we're going to take the long view, as one of my favorite Gaylord Nelson quotes here. It's important for us to be looking to those solutions that will benefit in the long term, not just ones that look good for the next election cycle. The DNR is going to be very involved and engaged at all levels on these issues. Just in the Secretary's office, there's 3 of us in the Secretary's office, but we have more than 70 years of experience in government at local and state levels. So we've are comfortable doing these jobs and ready to tackle the challenges ahead. One of the ways we know we're going to tackle those challenges is science is going to guide our decisions. We're going to rely on the experts. I am not an expert by any stretch of the imagination on most of these issues. But there are experts in the DNR, really good, qualified, talented people that are going to be able to help us figure out what we're going to do with these challenging issues. We're going to pursue that science, and we're going to take it where it leads us. We're also going to, where necessary, where enforcement is necessary, we'll take action. We'll be working closely with the legislature on a wide variety of areas. But we're also going to be working with everyone in this room. And you all are critical to us making progress on a lot of these issues. And we need to be organized. We need to be organized about how we tackle these things, because if you're not organized, well, that's what can happen. But we are delighted to be working with the Lakes Association. We're privileged to work with you in the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership, which has been paying it forward for the last 40 years, to play off from the Gaylord quote. It's been a great partnership, nationally recognized, the envy of other states. Together we've achieved tremendous success in the legislature, establishing the Water Resources Account in the 1980s that today funds about $6 million annually to water-based programs. The Lake Leaders Institute, graduating 12 crews of 350 informed and engaged citizens, many of whom are in the audience today. And let's not forget, one of the first citizen-based monitoring programs in the nation. I still remember the days when you would have people in bureaucracies, again, I spent more than 20 years in state government, that were very skeptical about citizen monitoring. Well, won't be able to do it right. They won't, QA, QC, and lots of concerns about that. And turns out they were wrong. And citizen monitors are critical to our being able to do our work, and reminded of the old, this always reminds me of the old Dave Barry quote, where he said, just remember, amateurs built the Ark, professionals built the Titanic. So thank you all for your contributions to water resources in Wisconsin. Again, science is the epicenter of our natural resources management. And your input is essential to making these decisions move forward. How do we get everyone paddling in the same direction? We have big issues, big challenges, but we can and are seeing successes. Again, this work on just the clean drinking water and the hearings that are come up and the work ahead, I'm very dedicated to doing all I can on this front. Everybody in the Secretary's office is dedicated to this. I don't think you'd have trouble finding staff throughout the DNR committed to this. But if all of us are committed to this and are pointing in the right direction, it's still not going to be enough. We need everybody in this room to help us insist that as a state in Wisconsin, near the end of the second decade of the 21st century, that collectively we need to figure out a way to make sure that people have potable drinking water coming out of their taps. But you're going to need to let people know loud and clear that that's important and that we need to take important actions moving forward. Again, I'm reminded of the quote attributed to a story about FDR. And the story is when he was president, he had some lobbyist in his office arguing for some particular issue. And the president turned to this guy and said, "I agree with you 100%. Now go out and make me do it." That's what this is about, folks. It's about making folks do the right thing and invest in the right resources to get us to the end result that we all, as a community in Wisconsin, deserve and want. And that's not a partisan issue. It's not a liberal or conservative issue. It's a, look, we've done a lot of important, exciting things in Wisconsin. You go back just on the environmental side, you go, whether you're talking about, Aldo Leopold's work up to our work on acid rain, to our work in terms of secondary treatment for sewage. And there's this long list of things that, who were the leaders in the country? Wisconsin. Who's the leaders in the country on phosphorus, trying to get phosphorus reductions and those standards in place? Wisconsin. So do we have lots of work to do? Sure, but there's lots of opportunity for us working together to move forward. So whether it is grappling with challenges associated with the year of clean drinking water, emergency preparedness related to floods and other natural calamities, the day-to-day challenges working with people across this state on a wide variety of water quality and quantity challenges, this relationship that we have with your organization, with the sister agencies that we work with, and with our federal agencies is crucial to making progress. And if we do all that, we get to celebrate. And I'm looking forward to being part of that effort. Will it be a challenge? Sure. But as we look outside and hopefully begin to see the grip of a very long winter may finally be loosening. I said, it was interesting, I think we're experiencing all 4 seasons of Wisconsin this week. But I am reminded that and I'm confident we can be successful. Thank you.
Hi, I am wondering, don't zoom in on me. I am wondering how the governor's office and then the water quality task force are working together, if you know.
Yes, and by the way, everybody hear me if I step away from there? Good, let's make sure this is on. We are working very closely together with the Water Quality Task Force. The opening session of the task force, we spent about 4.5 hours, and by we I mean staff at the DNR, DATCAP, Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, and the Department of Health Services, kind of educating all of the members of the task force, and also Ken Bradbury with the Wisconsin Geological Natural History Survey. And I was very impressed, actually. I mean, these are really busy people, and the idea that they were going to sit there and the chair and co-chair said, you don't get to ask any questions until the end. So for 4.5 hours, they got extensive, detailed information about everything that we were doing on every issue. So it was a good, ground setting for them. And we are going to be, we will have staff at all of the hearings moving forward, and we've been working very closely with both Chairman Nowak and Vice Chair Shankland, and give me a chance to tour the state at all these hearings. So we won't be talking, the DNR staff and other state agencies at these other hearings. This will be for the legislators to hear from people to come to these hearings, but we'll be there to hear that. And their idea, just so you know, at each one of these hearings is that they're going to try to, anybody will be able to come talk about whatever they want. But the idea is that they're going to try to focus on particular issues depending on where they are. When you're in Central Sands, that'll be a more important topic for people to talk about than when you're up in Kewaunee County talking about what's happening up there with the karst topography, et cetera. So, we expect to be have very either very good relationships or really sick of each other by the end of the year.
And actually, Representative Shankland and Todd will both be here at the last session at 2:45, talking about just those kind of issues. Other questions?
Just one. I was curious about the status of the DNR board, if that might change back to more independent, and then also the Department of Tourism working together with the tourism and possibly doing more PR as far as just clean water, clean watersheds, watershed awareness, that type of thing, coming into the state.
Sure. I'll take the second one first. We actually, there's a discussion. We've had some discussions with tourism. As you know, I think we're up to, it's about an $18 billion industry now in Wisconsin. Agriculture is number one, timber products are number two, and then tourism is our third biggest industry in the state. So it's, and obviously, we have that benefit. One of the reasons people come here is because we have clean, plentiful water resources, and we want to maintain that. So yes, we are having those conversations with tourism. As it relates to DNR secretary, it's obviously a decision to be made at the governor's level, although he's been very clear that he wants to see it return to a board-appointed secretary. As you may have noticed, nobody's taking much action on appointments of anybody to anything these days. So we'll see where that goes in the future, but that remains the governor's position.
Todd, thanks for coming to address our group here this afternoon. In the Central Sands area, of course, high-capacity wells are a significant issue and all the ensuing problems that result from that. Our former Attorney General, not too long ago, issued an opinion that the DNR, when considering a new high-capacity well, could not take into account the cumulative impact of nearby wells in determining whether they would issue a new permit. To date, I understand that the DNR has not changed their position. In other words, you're still following the former Attorney General's, in my opinion, flawed opinion, but that's another matter. I'm not an attorney. Is there any, do you see the DNR changing its position anytime soon on cumulative impact when renewing a new well permit application? Sure.
Certainly well aware of the issue. There's a lot of things in play on this. In terms of following AG's opinion, one of the questions, of course, always comes to what the current AG opinion is on matters like this. And there's other pieces at play as well toward that end. One of the other things we're waiting to see is what might happen with cases that are winding their way to the Supreme Court. So that was also a factor in us trying to decide what we might do moving forward. Just this week, I think it was on Wednesday, the Supreme Court announced that they were taking a case to address that very issue of high caps and the DNR's ability to look at the cumulative impact. So I think we're going to get an answer from the Wisconsin Supreme Court on that question soon.